Chapter 270. Within the format pyramid, Base's projected image seemed to be filled with a layer of clouds and dust, but there was the glimmer of starlight within. Luo Nan's mind shifted over and saw the starlight flow like a river. It rippled within the format pyramid, and there were layers of dark surging waves that pushed Base's image up and down. It was an extraordinary scene. However, the current situation could not be supported purely by aesthetics. The uncontrollable growth of soul strength and the capacity of the hollow depository broke through the limit. This caused the interference between the mental and material planes to continue to increase, and the interference to the format pyramid grew stronger and stronger. Luo Nan was a bit worried. The layout of the format pyramid and the ranks of his believers would undergo a huge change when he woke up. Fortunately, this situation had not occurred yet. His mind swept over Base's image, triggering a certain key. A long black shadow pierced through the clear waves of starlight. It was the materialization of the order frame, the dark chains. This marvelous chain was like a flood dragon. It bobbed up and down in the endless river of stars, appearing and disappearing from time to time. Right now, it was circling around the periphery of Base's image. It made a slight sound, and the meaning behind it was probably a guide for Base's order. That night at Frost River Reality, and Wang had tried to control the demon, but he had not succeeded. The uncontrollable chaos element transmitted through internal channels and corroded life. This was the most important reason why the elites of the order were wiped clean. Base had been attacked back then. He had nearly exploded and died. In his despair, he had sought out Fairchild, hoping to obtain a dignified death. After Fairchild had restrained Base, he had asked Luo Nan to use his order frame to help Base comb out a new path of life. Luo Nan had indeed succeeded. Although Base's life essence had been completely corroded and replaced by the chaos element, Luo Nan had established a brand new binding order upon this chaos. Base relied on this to live in this world. But because of this, Base's life was in Luo Nan's hands. Of course, Luo Nan had been asked by Fairchild to save Base. He did not want to do anything to Base. Luo Nan did not think that a strong person like Base would be able to control him if he were to harden his heart and seek death. After that night, Luo Nan did not attempt to do anything to Base. He was admitted to the hospital for treatment, distressed by the increased loss of control over his soul strength. Fairchild was summoned back by the upper echelons of the Order of Justice for questioning and investigation. The two sides did not contact each other. Many times, Luo Nan simply forgot about this matter. The unforeseen event of the Mystic Arts Research Society made Luo Nan's train of thought circle around. He was thinking, should I get in touch with this person? Luo Nan hesitated for a moment, but he didn't make his next move. Aside from the Wraith sign and ink, Luo Nan had not used this channel to contact or control anyone. It was one thing to treat a Darksider species that lacked intelligence and his own pets. But it was another thing to treat Xie Junping, Cat Eyes and Base, a highly intelligent life form. He didn't know what the order framework could do. Moreover, contacting Base because of the Mystic Arts Research Society was a little funny. After all, in the eyes of a powerhouse like Base, the level of a school society was too low. Luo Nan shook his head and his mind left. As the saying goes, cultivation knows no sun or moon. To a large extent, it referred to the complete loss of one's grasp of time in the outside world when one was in a state of meditation. Luo Nan felt that he had walked a full circle in the format pyramid interface. In reality, nearly half an hour had already passed. The Phantom flew all the way in autopilot mode and entered the River Wu district. The car's AI had long since entered Shui Lei's reserved address and designed a route. Soon it brought Luo Nan to the Boshan building where the Divine Yu Gym was located. This was a large standalone high-rise building. It occupied an area of over 100 acres. Its name was Boshan, and its design was an imitation of the ancient Boshan furnace. It was a very famous landmark building in the River Wu district. Boshan building was shaped like a mountain, wide at the bottom and sharp at the top. The lower level was a tidy office building, and the upper level was a business district with stacked heavy rocks. Various stores were scattered within, and there was an extremely brilliant green aerobic track that circled around the building and reached the Sky Garden at the very top. This should be one of the highest-class business districts in the River Wu district. Gym Master Xiao must be quite wealthy to be able to open a store here and open a gym. Luo Nan parked the car in the underground parking lot and took the elevator to the high-level business district. He then contacted Shuelei and soon found the location of the Divine Yu Gym under Shuelei's guidance. If the Boshan building was viewed as an artificial mountain, then the Divine Yu Gym should be located in the area halfway up the mountain. It did not take up a large amount of space. It was an open-style building with an ancient courtyard. The building was limited by the topography of the business district. The 3 courtyards were pushed up, occupying a corner of the building facing the sun. It was as if the building was built against the mountain. It was extremely elegant. Though it was located in the bustling business district, the front of the gym was quite simple. A simple signboard with the words, Divine Yu, hung on it. It was upright and proper. There was no money left behind and it lacked any distinguishing features. Shuelei rushed out to welcome Luo Nan at this time. He was wearing the light gray training clothes that Luo Nan had seen him in for the first time. There was a symbol of a 3-legged cauldron on his chest. His muscles bulged out the training clothes, making him look even more majestic. Luo Nan's gaze stopped on the 3-legged cauldron symbol for a moment. He suddenly thought of the gym master's name. Of course, it was also the name of this gym. It was very likely that the gym master's name really came from the story of Yu forging the 9 cauldrons. A person was like their name. Looking at the appearance and layout of the gym, Gym Master Zhou Xian was indeed an old-school figure. Shuelei didn't know what Luo Nan was thinking in an instant. He grinned, a bit embarrassed. Nanster, the gym master is currently teaching a small class. I'm afraid you'll have to wait a bit. Half an hour is fine. Luo Nan wasn't in a hurry. It's nothing. Oh right. Can I listen in for a bit? Shuelei scratched his head when he heard this. This class won't do. They're all 7 or 8-year-old kids. They're all unstable. Once they fall apart, it'll be hard to gather them again. Let's go to the mind study first and wait a bit. Luo Nan didn't insist. He followed Shuelei inside. He was just a bit curious. The gym master is personally teaching the children? When Luo Nan was young, his aunt and uncle had signed up for a few martial arts classes for the sake of training the children's bodies. It wasn't easy to see the owner of the class. Normally, the class was taught by a coach. The gym and the training classes were different. There are few people in the gym. It's hard to allocate them. Plus, it's important for the children to build their foundations. So the gym master is personally coming. Shuelei turned his head to look. He lowered his voice and said, Actually, there are very few children who can persevere. They can't endure the hardships. The gym master also said that there aren't many who truly fit his path. There's no need to forcefully sculpt them, but he can't mislead the students. From a mischievous rock to an unpolished jade, it's enough to shine through. Maybe one day they'll be enlightened and they'll be able to rely on this path. Luo Nan laughed as he looked at Shuelei. So what you're saying is that you fit the gym master's path? Shuelei wasn't polite at all. Yeah. The gym master once said that I'm quite similar to him when he was young. Chapter 271. The sky had turned dark long ago. There were not many lit places in the Daoguan. The front courtyard was a bit livelier. There were students and parents shuttling back and forth under the lights. There were very few people when they reached the middle courtyard. The corridor was lit, but it made the courtyard even darker. Shuelei led Luo Nan up the corridor on the left. They arrived at the back courtyard. It was pitch black here. No one could be seen at all. The lights of the corridor and the haze of the bustling city sprinkled down. Only then would they not be in total darkness. There aren't usually many people here, Shuelei mentioned. He then pointed at the pitch-black wooden building in front of them. We're here. That's the mind study. The wooden building looked long and wide under the dusky light. Practically took up most of the back courtyard. This surprised Luo Nan a bit. He had always thought that the mind study was a study or something like that when he heard Shuelei talk about it. He never expected it to be an extremely large room. Could already be used as a training ground. Luo Nan was even more certain when he walked into the mind study. This place should have been a training ground in the past. The floor beneath his feet was made of soft wood with excellent elasticity. It was very comfortable to walk on it after taking off his shoes. But it was certainly in use now. Quite a few items were placed inside. The layout was quite casual and it looked a bit messy. There was a short table placed near the door. There were a few cushions and a tea set on top of it. There was a stove next to the short table. It was used to boil water and boil tea. It was clean and tidy. It really did look like someone was here often. Shuelei turned on the lights. The lights only covered the area in front of the door. The layout inside was even more dusky and messy. The shadows were indistinct and it looked a bit terrifying. Shuelei was a bit embarrassed by this situation. The gym master usually lives here. This place is a bedroom, a study, a living room and even a utility room. It's just that they aren't separated. Luonan was very baffled. Why? The gym master said that he's impatient and full of fire. He needs an open place to channel it. It's easy to get sick if he's stifled. Of course, we normal people can't do this. Shuelei took out the tea set, kettle and other things used to entertain guests as he spoke. He turned on the stove to boil water. Who knew that his wristband would vibrate the moment he put the water in? He slapped his forehead after receiving the message. Nanster, sit here for a bit. I still have to go help my senior. Sorry. Go to hell. Of course Luonan didn't mind. The relationship between the two could be said to have been through life and death. There was no need to be so courteous. Shuelei, on the other hand, felt that he couldn't argue with them, so he put his palms together and bowed before hurrying over. It seemed that the dojo was indeed short of manpower. Luonan was a bit surprised. To be able to open a dojo in the Bosshan building, he should be worth hundreds of millions. Why didn't he hire a few more coaches? Or was it that business was too good for them to handle? Luonan recalled his impression of the Daoguan, but he felt that there weren't too many people in the Daoguan. There weren't many people staying in the back courtyard and there weren't many people in the middle courtyard. It really wasn't lively. It was a little strange. He didn't think too much about it. Before the water boiled, he stood at the door and watched the wind. This sort of ancient building was rarely seen in the current Xia city. Though it was a bustling business district with an unending stream of people above and below him, the clamor of people was blocked outside the courtyard. It was truly a wonderful place to find peace amidst the hustle and bustle. Outside the mind study, 2 stone figurines lit up. The orange-red glow illuminated the entrance to the mind study, the corridor and a small area of the courtyard. A gust of wind blew and leaves rustled as they fluttered down. Only now did Luonan see that there was actually a large tree planted in the back courtyard. It was so thick that it would take 2 people to wrap their arms around it. Luonan was unable to make out its species for a time. He just felt the edge of the light reach out and the shadow of the tree danced. It was quiet and secluded. The rustling sound of the wind cleansed one's heart and mind. It made one's mind clear and one's mind was silently born. Luonan stood under the wooden corridor outside the mind study. He was dazed for a time and the sound of boiling water behind him woke him up with a start. He walked back through the door and brewed a pot of tea for himself. He was young after all. His thoughts were fickle. His faintly discernible thoughts quickly dissipated, and he sized up the furnishings within the room. This large room possessed many functions and it made him quite curious. He immediately held the teacup, and his gaze swept over the various furnishings behind the dusky light. There were some places where the light couldn't reach and he couldn't see them clearly. He naturally used his mental senses. The range of his clairvoyance was around 10 meters, and it covered the entire area behind the door. His exquisite perception didn't let even the smallest speck of dust escape. Because of this, Luonan discovered that this place was actually quite clean. It couldn't be said to be spotless. However, it was often cleaned and there was a faint sense of order. It seemed that the arrangement of junk naturally separated a relatively independent area. It wasn't as messy and disorderly as Luonan's first impression of it. That's right. Luonan felt relieved. Gym Master Xiao was an old-school figure, so there was no need for him to make his own residence this messy. Luonan's interest was piqued after he understood the situation inside. He wanted to figure out how the functional areas represented by the orderly furnishings within the chaos were divided. There are books placed all around. Yes, there are pillows as well. That should be the study. There's a praying mat and it's quite close to the center. Could it be the bedroom? That side is full of furnishings. They look quite old. Is it a collection or is it a storeroom? Luonan pondered over the furnishings one by one, finding them quite delightful. Luonan's gaze roamed all the way and he made a full circle before he suddenly stopped. There was a large furnishings not too far away from the door. It was an enormous round ball that took an adult to wrap their arms around. It was nearly half the height of a person when placed on the ground. As for the material, it looked like metal. It looked very heavy and there was nothing else in the surroundings. It looked very abrupt. Luo Nan couldn't think of a use for it, so he simply walked over to take a closer look. Luo Nan got closer and he felt a slight chill hit him in the face. It was icy cold to the touch. It was definitely made of metal. Was it hollow or solid? If it was the latter, the wooden floorboards might not be able to support it. Luo Nan looked below the metal ball. It turned out that there was a large bowl-like tray. The metal ball rested in the tray and it looked quite stable. Luo Nan reached out his hand to push it, but it didn't move. He increased his strength and this time it was too much. The metal ball was greatly dislocated in the tray, and it emitted a grinding sound. The sound was exceptionally clear in the empty and quiet room. Luo Nan was shocked and he hastily stopped his hand. He didn't know what the structure of the connection was, but he only used a bit of strength and the metal ball began to roll slightly in the tray. It shook the floor below to the point of trembling. The spinning metal ball rubbed against Luo Nan's fingertips. Luo Nan could feel that there were uneven traces on the surface of the ball. It seemed to be broken lines and it was even colored. How could he not see a blurry pattern when the ball spun a bit? And it was luminous. There was something wrong with the style. Luo Nan was baffled when he suddenly felt that the blurry pattern was lifted up a bit. At first he thought that it was an illusion caused by the spinning, but then the grinding sound that came from the spinning disappeared. The spinning pattern continued to rise until it reached his chest. Chapter 272. Luo Nan was suddenly enlightened when he saw this. So it was maglev. In today's world, superconducting technology was greatly developed. Similar objects were not rare. The heavy metal ball hung in midair, still spinning. Luo Nan fiddled with it a bit and its speed increased slightly. The colorful lines on its surface pieced together to form a clearer diagram. Though Luo Nan was still unable to see what it was rather childlike. This colorful toy was a bit like the floating top Mo Ping had collected when he was young, but it was much larger. Perhaps this was a prop for children to use in class? Luo Nan fiddled with the metal ball and touched the tray. Judging from the way the two moved when they made contact, they shouldn't be superconducting materials. He couldn't help but be curious as to where the power source for the maglev was. He intentionally increased the precision of his senses. He looked through the metal ball's outer shell and sure enough he discovered a rather odd machine buried in the center of the ball. It didn't look like an electric motor. Just as he was pondering, the sound of footsteps came from outside. Shuelei greeted him. "Nanster, the gym master is here." Luo Nan rushed to the door and saw Shuelei walk in with a tall and thin man. Luo Nan didn't get a clear look at the man's face, so he followed his earlier preparations and bowed. "Gym Master Xiu." A loud bang exploded within the empty room. Luo Nan jumped in fright. He turned around to look and saw that the floating metal ball had already smashed to the ground. It overturned the tray and rumbled as it rolled on the cork floor. Shuelei reacted quickly. He rushed over and caught the rolling metal ball in 2 or 3 steps. Luo Nan's embarrassment was indescribable. He froze on the spot, not knowing what to do for a time. Shuelei placed the metal ball back on the tray, not forgetting to soothe Luo Nan's cheeks. "It's nothing. It's nothing. Gym Master Nanster, you guys chat first." Luo Nan gaped, but the words he had prepared beforehand were useless in this sudden situation. He could only lower his head and bow. "I'm sorry. Sit." Gym Master Xiu, who was standing at the door, walked to the back of the short table and extended his hand to point Luo Nan to a seat. His voice was dark and hoarse. It was faintly discernible. Were it not for the gesture, Luo Nan wouldn't have understood what he meant. Only now did Luo Nan truly see who had come. He was stupefied once more. This Gym Master Xiu was about 40 or 50 years old and was very thin like a bamboo pole. When the night wind blew in, his wide antique robe rustled, as if he could be carried into the sky at any time. The difference in light from inside and outside cast a few shadows on his skinny cheeks. At first glance he looked like a skeleton whose skin was about to be weathered away. Frankly speaking, this gym master really wasn't good looking. But Luo Nan was no stranger to this sort of image. His grandfather had been tormented by illness all these years and it was the same. Could it be that this person's health is also not good? Gym Master Xiu was the first to kneel on the ground. Luo Nan knew that this was an ancient custom, so he learned to sit down. However, Gym Master Xiu only fiddled with the tea set, as if he wanted to brew tea for a guest. Luo Nan mulled over the wording in his mind, but unfortunately this was far from his forte. He needed time to sort things out again, so he could only maintain his silence. The training ground was silent for a moment. The quieter it was, the more awkward it was. Luo Nan wanted to speak a few times, but he was unable to find an excuse. He could only find something to do and pay attention to Xue Lei through his mental senses. Xue Lei placed the metal ball back on the bowl tray and flipped a switch. The outer layer of the ball was disassembled, and a mechanical device was taken out from the central cavity. It was also spherical with a diameter of 6 or 7 centimeters. It was only the size of a fist and its outer layer was wrapped in a fine metal mesh. Its inner layer was a device similar to a gyroscope. He fiddled with it a few times then scratched his head. Clearly this toy was broken. Luo Nan dispelled his last bit of wishful thinking. This gave him the opportunity to speak. He lowered his head and apologized. "I'm sorry, Gym Master Xiu. I put that." He was halfway through his sentence, but he was unable to think of how to describe the metal ball. He was stuck and sweat appeared on his forehead. Gym Master Xiu was pouring water into a cup. He raised his head to glance at Luo Nan. "The Tai Chi ball. It's the Tai Chi ball. That Tai Chi ball, I will definitely fix it." Cough. It seemed that Luo Nan was fated to not be able to speak a complete sentence today. The itch in his throat flared up and he was unable to block it. He could only turn his head and cough twice. Gym Master Xiu didn't really care. It was broken to begin with. It's already strange that it was able to last this long. He pushed a cup of tea in front of Luo Nan as he spoke. The itch in Luo Nan's throat had yet to subside. He took the cup but he didn't dare to drink it. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold it in and choke it out. This was probably a lack of manners. Luo Nan felt rather helpless. Gym Master Xiu ignored him. He picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp, minding his own business. Then he lowered his head and played with the cup in his hand. Luo Nan had just spoken a few words, and now he had to enter a state of silence again. Luo Nan really didn't know what to do for a time. Xue Lei saw that the situation was bad, so he didn't care about the Tai Chi ball anymore. He hurriedly put the mechanical device back into the cavity, walked over with hurried steps and knelt to the side. He poured tea for the two of them and he secretly winked at Luo Nan. He deliberately spoke in a loud voice. "Nanster, you don't need to be restrained here. The gym master doesn't care about common courtesy." Luo Nan looked at his kneeling posture, then at the teacup in his hand. He was speechless for a time. Luckily, Xue Lei's interruption caused Gym Master Xiu to emerge from his state of silence. He continued to play with the cup with his head lowered, but he finally spoke. "I heard a few things about you from Xue Lei. He recommended that you learn breathing techniques to treat coughs. However, I'm not a doctor. Breathing techniques aren't that miraculous." Luo Nan listened carefully, afraid that he would mishear. But when he heard the second half of the sentence, his heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Xue Lei and Xue Lei stealthily gestured for him to calm down. "Xue Lei." Gym Master Xiu suddenly called his name. Xue Lei jumped in fright. He hurriedly straightened his body and sat upright. "Gym Master. What did you say that day?" Xue Lei opened his mouth and coughed a few times. Only then did he organize his thoughts. He carefully said, "I was talking about the things you said before, Gym Master. You can inspect the internal organs, move the 100 meridians and take in the soul through breathing." Xue Lei didn't mention the more mysterious things like, observe the heaven and earth, know yin and yang and know the secrets of the gods, but the meaning was certainly conveyed. Gym Master Xiu didn't say a word for another 5 or 6 seconds. He just let the cup rotate between his withered and bony fingers. Just when Luo Nan thought that Gym Master Xiu was angry, Gym Master Xiu slowly raised his head. His sunken eyes faced Luo Nan. "I will speak empty words when I teach. I will give the youngsters a deep impression. I will let them remember a few words. I will also avoid teaching inflexibly and rigidly." Gym Master Xiu's gaze made Luo Nan's hair stand on end, but he still responded, "Yes." Luo Nan had to admit that even though Xue Lei was a living example placed before his eyes, Luo Nan wouldn't believe most of Shui Lei's mysterious description. He really didn't expect that he would be able to cure a serious illness by learning breathing techniques. He mainly wanted to avoid offending Shui Lei. He also wanted to make his life more convenient in the future. Gym Master Xiu's words were more realistic. Luo Nan could naturally accept it. A few seconds of silence passed before Gym Master Xiu spoke once more. No matter what kind of technique it is, you must start from the real thing. Time and volume are the correct path. Your body isn't suited for volume. Then what about time? But Luo Nan didn't understand for a time. Chapter 273. Luo Nan understood what he meant, but his train of thought was unable to turn back. He hesitated and did not answer. Gym Master Xiu gave clearer guidance. You are a student and you have other matters to attend to. I can teach you, but do you have enough time to absorb and digest it? Luo Nan was speechless. He discovered that this was a very practical problem. His daily classes, the Society's general knowledge training, the daily consumption of Frost River reality, and his own research on formatting theory. Every single one of them took up a lot of time. Of course, he did not need to concoct drugs every day. His schedule was much more relaxed. It was not impossible to squeeze in a bit more time, but it was bound to be scattered and unbearable. How could he guarantee his learning results in this way? Luo Nan looked at Shui Lei. Shui Lei was stunned. Clearly he had not considered these things. In the end, Gym Master Xiu proposed a more practical method. Make a schedule. Make a schedule for the entire day and show it to me. Okay. Luo Nan had a ready-made schedule. It was the general knowledge training plan He Yuan had drawn up for him last time. He just needed to delete the specific course names and take it out for use. Luo Nan wanted to transfer it to Gym Master Xiu, but he suddenly discovered that Gym Master Xiu did not have his wristband on. Shui Lei said hurriedly, "Just give it to me. The Gym Master isn't used to electronic products." Shui Lei took the information and connected it to the printer in the corner of the training field. He operated it. Luo Nan was a bit surprised. The wristband was not just a communication tool for modern citizens. It was an integrated pass that contained proof of identity, social privileges, assets, credit, and other contents. Luo Nan did not feel this when he wore the wristband, but once he lost it he would immediately experience the feeling of being unable to move an inch. His uncle worked at the SCA. He had taught the children of his family a special social experience class. It left a deep impression on Luo Nan. Amidst the hum of paper being passed, Luo Nan was finally able to match Gym Master Xiu with the image of an old-school character he had preset. It seemed to make sense to use this as an explanation. Shui Lei handed over the printed form. Gym Master Xiu swept his gaze over it and said calmly, "Who made this?" Luo Nan was startled. Shui Lei laughed before he could respond. "Could it be Secretary He?" "Oh, it's Sister He." Gym Master Xiu lightly shook the paper, causing it to shatter. Then he placed the paper on the short table and placed the cup he had been playing with on top of it. "Not bad, I finally have time to sleep. If you want to learn the breathing technique, you must ensure that you sleep no less than 6 hours every night. Learning to breathe begins with sleeping." Luo Nan was stunned. He instinctively looked at Shui Lei. The latter winked at him fiercely, signaling him to agree. Gym Master Xiu didn't wait for Luo Nan to speak before saying, "There's no need to rush to answer. Go back and think about whether or not you can guarantee a stable routine. Then you can make a decision." With that, Gym Master Xiu raised his hand, indicating that he could leave. "That's it? Is this dojo master easy to talk to or not easy to talk to?" Luo Nan felt a bit uncomfortable. His brain was a bit numb, so he let Shui Lei lead him to salute Gym Master Xiu, bid him farewell and leave. The two continued to follow the walkway back. On the way, Luo Nan was still pondering, "Learning to sleep. You learn to breathe in your sleep." Shui Lei corrected his misconception. The sleeping immortal technique, the nose-locking technique, and the sleeping dragon hibernating technique have existed since ancient times. Gym Master Xiu chose this point to cut in. He must have taught you in accordance with your current situation. Luo Nan grunted. He wasn't doubting Shui Lei. The world was vast. There were all sorts of strange things, especially within the scope of supernatural powers. Just from what Luo Nan knew, Mr. Bai's dream technique was closely related to sleep. There was also Ruiwen. She had already slept for over half a month. Luo Nan was certain that she used sleep to adjust her state. Gym Master Xiu had said something extremely well. No matter what kind of technique it was, one must start from the real thing. Only when one truly learned it would one know if it was useful or not and how effective it would be. Shuelei still possessed this level of patience. Luo Nan's brain finally sprang to life, but he remembered something else. Oh right, the Tai Chi ball. Luo Nan still didn't know what a Tai Chi ball was, but he had broken someone else's equipment. It was clear as day. He needed to give Shuelei an explanation. Shuelei couldn't help but scratch his head when he heard the words Tai Chi ball. That thing really is broken. Forget it. Don't worry about it. Concentrate on organizing your routine. Work hard when you get back. I'll think of a way to fix that thing. Luo Nan really wasn't familiar with the situation. He could only say, I'll pay for the repair fees. We'll talk about it later. Shuelei chuckled and led Luo Nan outside. The two passed through the atrium and the front courtyard. There was practically no one in the Daoguan right now. Shuelei explained to the deserted situation, we haven't been recruiting new classes lately because we're about to move. Luo Nan had been in the back courtyard for over half an hour. He had a deep impression of the quiet and secluded feeling of the Daoguan. Why would they move such a good place? Shuelei sighed. Gym Master won this place in a bet with someone in order to settle down in Xia City back then. The property itself belongs to Boshan Industries. The person who made the bet only paid 10 years of rent. Now that the lease is up, the rent for renewing the lease is astronomical. We don't have the savings. Gym Master isn't good at business. His days are quite bitter. The two had already walked to the entrance. Luo Nan turned his head. It was hard to imagine what it was like to be unable to earn money in such a bustling area. But when he saw the simple words, God you, on the Daoguan signboard and thought about Gym Master Xiu's temperament, Luo Nan felt that Shuelei's words weren't strange. Back then Xiaolin said that if the Gym Master sublet the Daoguan and switched to a smaller place, he would have been rich just from the rent alone. He wouldn't have ended up like this. Shuelei was a bit unnatural when he mentioned his ex-girlfriend. Luo Nan laughed awkwardly. Frankly speaking, he never thought of subletting. Judging from Shuelei's tone, it seemed the same. Everyone here didn't have any brains for economics. Luo Nan bid farewell to Shuelei and didn't delay any longer. He rode the phantom flying car straight to Renai Hospital. Since he had to go to the Daoguan, his treatment and study time were pushed back to the evening. Time was tight and he needed to discuss matters concerning his schedule with He Yuan. However, when Luo Nan arrived at the hospital and saw Bai Xinyan, He Yuan was nowhere to be seen. If you want private tutoring today, you'll certainly be disappointed. The accident investigation team from the society's headquarters just arrived in Xia City half an hour ago. Bai Xinyan gestured for Luo Nan to take off his clothes and put on his equipment. She raised her eyebrows when she saw Luo Nan staring blankly in place without moving. Student Luo Nan, please don't make your disappointment so obvious, okay? Ever since He Yuan had revealed Bai Xinyan's intentions, Luo Nan's resistance to her teasing had increased greatly. In a certain sense, this could be considered a kind of confrontation. He thought for a moment and asked, Investigation team, what does she mean by adding the accident? Bai Xinyan placed a hand on his shoulder. Gym Master Xiu, what did he say to you? Chapter 274. When a man and a woman maintained gazing at each other for a long time without any physical desires or emotional connection, they could only be understood as the manifestation and transmission of dominance. Luo Nan certainly did not think that much, but Bai Xinyan was able to grasp the subtle meaning within. From her point of view, Luo Nan was far from being able to dominate others with his current capital. He also hadn't truly felt the domination of others towards him. Then the answer was very obvious. This was merely a display of his emotions, nothing more. In other words, childish. There was really no meaning in maintaining the same channel as a childish boy. Bai Xinyan did not want to force herself. She simply reached out and pressed down on Luo Nan's eyes. The color of your pupils is really ugly. She let go of Luo Nan's hand before he could struggle. She circled to the other side, completely ignoring Luo Nan's expression. She was pondering something in her mind. This kid's hostility has been growing more and more intense since Frost River reality. It's completely unreasonable. Luo Nan pressed down on his ears while she was pondering. He subconsciously took 2 steps away. He must have received a message from the psychic wave network. The person contacting him at this time was most likely He Yuan. 2 seconds later he received a communication request from Bai Xinyan. It was He Yuan on the other end. This was a 3-way communication initiated by He Yuan. Bai Xinyan was not a member of the society, but for the sake of convenience she applied for temporary permission to use the Xianxia. Ouyangchen was always very generous when it came to promoting the results of his own research. He handled it very easily. As a result, Bai Xinyan could observe the daily ecology of the Xia city branch from a close distance. She could gather the relevant information in a relaxed and happy manner. With such a big-hearted direct superior and many colleagues below her, the nun's heart would not be at peace after her retirement. Bai Xinyan smiled and greeted her with a bit of pity. "Hello, Sister Nun. Are those imperial envoys finished serving you?" He Yuan ignored Bai Xinyan's teasing. Perhaps she did not want to mention those people at all. She cut straight to the point. "I hope to hear your opinion on Mr. Luo's study arrangements at the Daoguan." "I have no opinion. It's because your boss didn't mention this matter to me at all. I wonder if he has an opinion of Gym Master Xiao? Or does he have an opinion of me?" Luo Nan was speechless at such an open and above-board complaint. However, it was impossible for him to continue stubbornly at a time like this. He could only comfort himself by saying that he had learned a thing or two. Following that, he explained the main points of his trip to the dojo in a few words. In truth, there was nothing much to say. Gym Master Xiao's meaning was very clear. He could teach them, but he had to arrange the time well. At most, the time period required was somewhat against the norm. That was all. He Yuan pondered for a moment, then asked Bai Xinyan, "Will it affect your treatment?" "Not at the moment. Of course, if you guys don't mind, I can add a research project. I want to see whether or not student Luo Nan's absorption and transformation efficiency has improved under the guidance of Gym Master Xiao." "Oh right. What do you think of Gym Master Xiao? Serious? Cordial? Smooth? Solitary? Aren't you going to explain to Secretary He?" Bai Xinyan's ability to make use of every opportunity was unparalleled. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He didn't want to answer. Fortunately, at this time He Yuan forcefully returned to the main topic. "It's fine as long as it doesn't affect the treatment. For the other projects, there was still room for adjustment of the timetable. Some pure knowledge projects for general knowledge learning can be taught through the psychic wave network. It would be even more ideal if they could be combined with the health pod treatment. The training time at Frost River Reality isn't much. The plan is feasible. However, let's postpone the particularly brain-burning classes for now. Excessive mental tension will certainly affect the effects of treatment. Most of them are general knowledge memories. The intensity isn't great. I will remind the others about the specifics." The 2 ladies took on the responsibility of drawing up the schedule, and it became the main axis of discussion. They only consulted Luo Nan, the person involved, on a few details. After taking a rough shape, He Yuan contacted the society members involved in the schedule one by one. Soon a brand new schedule was completed. Luo Nan had a subtle feeling when he saw the brand new schedule appear before his eyes. It was as if he was an outsider. He was on a completely different rhythm from the 2 ladies. Luo Nan quickly suppressed this peculiar feeling. He asked, "Should I take this form tomorrow and contact Gym Master Xiao?" He Yuan grunted. She seemed to want to say something, but in the end she simply said, "Show it to him. If there are any problems, you need to actually do it before you can make adjustments. Today we'll first do an experiment. We'll see the effects of networked learning in the treatment pod." Bai Xinyan pressed down on Luo Nan's shoulder. "Hey, did you hear that? I told you to take off your clothes." Luo Nan gritted his teeth as he took off his clothes and entered the pod. Bai Xinyan was quite considerate in delaying the Frost River Reality treatment. She gave the next hour to He Yuan. Today's general knowledge course was still the world order in and out of the psychic wave network. Luo Nan put on the immersive helmet early on, but he did not activate it for the time being. He connected to the psychic wave network through the Xianxia and entered learning guidance mode according to He Yuan's instructions. The first thing Luo Nan saw was the home page of the society. It was also the main interface of the game 10 Days in the Wilderness. The scenery of the wilderness, which he had only seen with his own eyes in a few social practice classes, appeared before his eyes. The rust-colored soil was like waves of solidified ocean waves. It extended into the distance, seemingly without end. The bulletin board, which had the style of a Western cowboy, seemed to be within reach. Looking at this scene, it seemed that he would be able to enter the wilderness with just one more step. "Why don't you give it a try?" A clear and distinct voice rang in his ear. This feeling was far too real, so much so that Luo Nan instinctively turned his head. Then he saw He Yuan. Right now, He Yuan was still wearing a well-tailored professional suit. The material was navy blue, and the inside was a white shirt that would never go wrong. Then there were long pants that accentuated the slender shape of her legs. She appeared confident, clean, and lively. This was her usual style of dressing. She would not dress up in the slightest bit of use. She would not have any other adornments. Luo Nan often saw this sort of image, but today was a bit different. This was because He Yuan's body was clearly draped in a layer of dreamy light. The original meaning of this light was to remind him that what he saw was not a true form. But the light contrasted with He Yuan's jade-like porcelain body. That sort of inhuman texture had a powerful impact that made Luo Nan lose his voice for a time. Chapter 275. Luo Nan was more or less in a daze when faced with He Yuan's new image. He only woke up from his dream when He Yuan's gaze, which seemed to have substance, shot over. "Can I?" The Hexier invented by President Ouyangchen was the terminal device of the psychic wave network. There were 6 communication levels in total. Most awakened were able to realize extremely convenient network functions through the first 3 levels. It was enough for daily use. The simulator belonged to the 4th communication level. Luo Nan had heard Mr. Bai talk about it before. This function was similar to the out-of-body state. One could realize the materialization of one's own logic on the psychic wave network. It was similar to the experience of virtual reality. This was already a relatively high level. Many people in the society couldn't handle it. Luo Nan was a mentally enhanced individual. He possessed the ability to send his soul and the out-of-body state early on. He had an advantage in this aspect compared to the majority of people. Mr. Bai had long determined that Luo Nan should be able to enter this level. But Mr. Bai also said that Luo Nan absolutely couldn't use the simulator function before the problem of the imbalance between body and soul was resolved. Otherwise, it was very likely that his soul strength would continue to grow, bringing even greater pressure to his body. He Yuan responded to this question. Because of the results of President Ouyang's logic world, the simulator function has undergone a large change. It is currently in a debugging state. After entering this level, the consumption of soul strength will increase exponentially. So as long as we control it properly, we can escape before the positive gain appears. Time is precious. We can begin. Luo Nan responded simply. He Yuan didn't directly engage in practical training. Instead, she reviewed the old and learned the new. "Last time I told you about the concrete form of supernatural powers on the psychic wave network." "Yes. Regarding supernatural powers, the East traditionally calls it qi. Some people in the West call it mana. Burners call it internal energy. The society's official name is telekinesis. No matter what it's called, it's fundamentally an energy information bestowed with order by the ability user." Luo Nan really liked the term bestowed order. This was in line with the comprehension he had gained from cultivating to this day. This made him talk without end. Therefore, the Hexier invented by President Ouyang is called a telekinesis according to the society's definition. Its built-in electronic components are not sophisticated, but it can guide psychic power to form a special terminal structure to achieve the analysis and control of energy information. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. From Luo Nan's perspective, the terminal structure of the Hexier was just a simple configuration. In terms of precision, there was still a large disparity between it and the external neuron and the deep-sea Type 4 dynamo core. It was even a bit inferior to the imitation chipset he had seen at Frost River Reality. But the most amazing thing about this invention was that it made full use of the ability user as a carrier. Through guidance, a relatively simple structure could be used to great effect. If a description had to be made, then the dynamo core and the imitation chipset were roughly equivalent to fully automatic weapons. As long as one knew how to operate them, they would be able to display astonishing effects in the corresponding field very quickly. As for the Lu Air, it was like a famous sword in ancient times. In the hands of a child, it might not even be able to kill a chicken. But in the hands of a peerless swordsman, it could defeat 1,000 troops and be invincible. Of course, this description might not be appropriate. Luo Nan had yet to truly explore the dynamo core's inner workings. He did not have an accurate understanding of the upper limits of the Hexier. But this did not hinder his feelings of admiration towards President Ouyang Chen. This kind of simplification and precise and appropriate structure made him, a beginner who had been painstakingly studying soul configuration to improve efficiency, only sigh in amazement. If his soul configuration had been purified to this degree, the external neuron would not have been stuffed to the point of bursting from the rapid growth of soul strength. Luo Nan thought about his current situation of being helpless when facing the enormous barrier lake. He had the impulse to run over and take Ouyang Chen as his master. He Yuan was not surprised by Luo Nan's deep understanding of the Hexier and the psychic wave network. She had experienced Luo Nan's outstanding ability to understand this course during her last lecture. This was under the premise that the political form and content were not involved. She just added a bit. In the first 3 levels of communication, the Hexier only needs to transmit and interpret the information flow. But when it comes to the simulator level, it involves the sharing of energy. In other words, the telekinesis of tens of thousands of people is used to support an enormous virtual world. In this world, the transmission of energy and information is extremely efficient. Just like last time when we faced that fellow who controlled the human-faced arachnid. Luo Nan nearly blurted out Mo Luan's name. During the operation against Jack back then, Elder Mo Luan of the Blood Flame Order had brought the human-faced arachnid to hunt for food. It had brought He Yuan and the others a great deal of trouble. In the end, He Yuan had borrowed Ouyang Chen's power through the psychic wave network to repel the arachnid. That scene was still fresh in Luo Nan's memory. He could not help but ask, can it be done as long as one enters the simulator level? In theory it's possible. But the burden is very heavy and the authority required is very high. Perhaps there will be improvements in the future. The psychic wave network has undergone a fundamental change due to the integration of the logic world. What we need to do next is to understand it as comprehensively as possible before most people arrive. He Yuan's reminder made Luo Nan suddenly realize that he was clearly standing at the entrance to the wilderness, but he did not see the silhouette of a single person. How many people usually come here? The average number of people online is around 800. That's a lot. How many awakened are there in the entire Xia city? I'm talking about the entire world. He Yuan supplemented with an explanation. Aside from mentally enhanced people who can send their souls and leave their bodies, the vast majority of people have to become architects before they can come into contact with this level. And sending their souls and leaving their bodies are extremely rare among ordinary awakened. So under normal circumstances, every person you come into contact with here is a veteran. Luo Nan was a bit stunned. Then isn't it a bit early for me to come here? He Yuan did not respond to this question. She walked slowly, stepping into the wilderness with a single step. The radiance of her translucent figure caused the dark red background color to brighten up. Then she turned to look at Luo Nan. The name of the society is the Wilderness Explorers Society. The main direction is the wilderness. Of course, this also includes the even more dangerous oceans. President Ouyang chose the 10 days in the wilderness game as the main interface. This wasn't a random choice. This was a very good place to learn basic tactics. We'll focus on adapting today. If there aren't any abnormal reactions, then Crag Burst will lead you here to learn tactical commands for the next few days. He is also the only one among your instructors who can enter the 4th level. The other classes will be interspersed. Luo Nan knew that the time for idle chatter was over. He nodded in agreement. There's one more thing. Yuan suddenly smiled. This smile came without any warning. It was resplendent and dazzling under the reflection of the illusory radiance. It was dazzling. Then she waved her arm through the air. A second later, a mirror appeared at the border of the wilderness. The mirror reflected a ball of fuzzy light. It was like a drifting mist. In the center of it, one could faintly make out the shape of a tetrahedron. This was... Luo Nan suddenly realized something when he saw the angle of the mirror. Chapter 276. This was the first time Luo Nan entered the simulator level of the psychic wave network. Since the feeling was similar to that of an immersive device, it lacked a bit of novelty. He just treated this as a virtual reality experience unique to ability users. He never expected that his appearance in this world would actually be like this. Luo Nan thought about how he had used this appearance to communicate with He Yuan. It was hard for him to avoid embarrassment. No wonder she wanted to laugh. A rare smile appeared on He Yuan's face, but it was extinguished in an instant like a firework. Then she returned to her usual calm. You're still lacking in self-reflection. If you want to move normally here, you must first establish your own image. So I have to mold a mold like in some games? It's self-awareness. Self-portrait? The two instantly communicated a few concepts. He Yuan originally wanted to give a more detailed explanation, but she stopped when the words reached her mouth. She only kept the mirror. How you want to establish your image is up to you. Luo Nan stared blankly in front of the virtual mirror for a while. He saw how serious He Yuan was. It was hard not to overthink things. But he couldn't think of any other ideas no matter how much he pondered. His thoughts stirred at once, and the mirror's reflection formed a rough outline. The general process was no different from his daily sketches. Luo Nan had once mentioned to Xia Junping that he wasn't too good at self-portraits. This was not an excuse. He had never been able to grasp his own characteristics, so he could only draw a likeness. But compared to the vast majority of people in this world, his ability to mold himself was quite reliable. Soon, the fuzzy glowing body in the mirror transformed into a simple human figure. It slowly enriched and fine-tuned. When it took form half a minute later, it was already 70 to 80% similar to Luo Nan himself. If he was a bit more detailed, he would certainly be able to do it even better. Is this okay? Luo Nan raised his hand. He felt that it was more or less the same as a solid state, so he turned his head and asked. He Yuan looked at him for a long time and shook her head slightly. Luo Nan asked curiously, "What's wrong?" "This is a trick." He Yuan walked back to Luo Nan's side. On the simulator level, our image should reflect the characteristics of our individual energy and information operation structure. According to President Ouyang's explanation, it can be considered a self-logical inspection. For example, me. As she spoke, He Yuan raised her hand. Her long and slender fingers slightly spread open, indicating for Luo Nan to look over. My current image isn't what I want it to be. However, a burner's inner energy, the circulation of energy and information, was based on the form of light and heat. That was why my image was unavoidably glowing. Others can tell at a glance that I'm a burner. Luo Nan stared blankly at He Yuan's jade tube-like fingers for a while. He finally understood. In other words, the image on the simulator level is also some sort of objective reality. At the very least, it's a kind of projection. It's not something that can be made out of whatever you want. He had indeed thought it through. However, when he looked at his reflection in the mirror, he could not help but scratch his head. But I am still not an awakened. I haven't figured out my own logic yet. Luo Nan found a good reason, so much so that He Yuan was stunned for a moment. Then she nodded. Indeed. This point must be taken into consideration. Let's move on to the next stage and see how it goes. She indicated for Luo Nan to follow her as she spoke, stepping into the boundary of the wilderness with a single step. Luo Nan carried a strong sense of curiosity as he followed behind. He even reached out his hand to touch the notice board within the sandstorm. The roughness of the touch immediately returned to him. It's made of wood. The boundary between reality and illusion instantly blurred. Luo Nan turned his head, but the so-called entrance had long since disappeared. All he saw was the boundless rusty red earth. Instead, the outline of a building appeared in front of the notice board. Right now, he could be considered to have truly entered the simulator level. Luo Nan did not have the energy to sigh with emotion. He Yuan's practical lesson was absolutely not to bring him to see the scenery. He Yuan took him to familiarize himself with the environment for the next 20 minutes. The main location of the activity was a small town that was completely the same as the setting of the 10 days in the wilderness. It was called Blood Rock. In the game, this was the supply point for players and the place where missions were issued. But on the Psychic Wave Network, this place was more like a large salon. People who are online will carry out exchanges and discussions here. Discussions about what? Luo Nan had originally thought of using the idea of porting the game, but he suddenly discovered that his thoughts were childish when he heard He Yuan's introduction. Each and every one of these veterans were outstanding and famous characters of the inner world. They all had their own abilities and their own pursuits. How could they have the leisure to run here and play games? I've only come here once after joining the society. I didn't participate in the specifics. But I heard President Ouyang say that the topics they discuss are mostly related to self-logic, energy structure, mental and material interference and other domains. Luo Nan blinked. We can talk about it offline. But it's not as convenient as here. The psychic wave network is built by tens of millions of ability users. It's like a supercomputer. President Ouyang and the others can utilize the resources here to establish models that are hard to realize in reality. Alright, the style was quite appropriate. The problem was that Luo Nan had never seen such a dilapidated salon before. He Yuan led Luo Nan to walk on the central street of the small town. There was not a single soul in sight. The entire small town looked as if it had just been ransacked by a tornado. The vast majority of the houses had collapsed into ruins. Only a few buildings remained in their original state. Practically every building is an independent section. A portion of them are portals for the game. They provide entertainment for people, but most of them are experimental models. They are the crystallization of the wisdom of many people. What's going on right now? The influence brought about by the logic world. He Yuan spoke softly. Since President Ouyang added the results of the logic world into the mix, the simulator's structural laws have undergone great changes. The vast majority of experimental models are unable to adapt to the changes in the environment. They have all been destroyed. The logic world. Luo Nan had a general understanding of the principles of the construction of the logic world. The structure of deep interference between the mental and the material was indeed very unfriendly. But the method of recreating the world through spatial faults was truly a mountain to behold. Sister He, are you saying that this place is equivalent to another logic world? He Yuan shook her head. This isn't my field of expertise. Luo Nan couldn't get an answer. He turned his head to look all around, but he couldn't see things clearly. He thought for a bit and walked to the edge of a ruin. He lowered his head to size up the rubble and rubble. The shape of a snowflake. How orderly. These ruins looked messy and disorderly from afar. But upon closer inspection, Luo Nan realized that each piece of debris displayed a certain structural pattern. He could find some sort of rule in each piece. It was nearly impossible to accomplish this in the real world. The difference between natural and artificial. Luo Nan extended his hand and picked up a piece of rubble. He wanted to seriously study it, but his fingertips lightened just as he lifted it halfway. The rubble fell to the ground. Luo Nan was a bit stunned. Chapter 277. Luo Nan instinctively reached out his hand to grab the crushed rock. The feeling of touch, weight and so on still existed. He really did grab the crushed rock. Right now he was squatting on the ground with his back to He Yuan. His picking and tossing actions were very normal. He Yuan's attention wasn't on this. She took advantage of this time to continue introducing the simulator. The psychic wave network was established by President Ouyang. The virtual world is also endowed with basic order by him. However, President Ouyang didn't completely control it. Instead, he gathered the collective wisdom of researchers and endlessly adjusted it, turning individual order into public order. Blood Rock Town is one of the important pivots in establishing order. Luo Nan's attention was diverted a bit by He Yuan. He withdrew his gaze from the crushed rock and turned his head to ask, "Isn't this very troublesome?" Actually, what Luo Nan wanted to say was, why did he have to strip away his exclusive authority without rhyme or reason? This would certainly impede him, right? He Yuan was just about to respond when her gaze shifted to the side. Luo Nan looked over as well and saw the largest public exchange area in the town. It was similar to a tavern. The wooden swinging door swayed with a banging sound and a figure walked out. There were other people in the town. The other party clearly heard the conversation between Luo Nan and He Yuan. He directly opened his mouth and said, "How can a single person control the complete structure of a virtual world? Even if they do, who would come here under the conservative and closed rules and order?" This was a man around 40 years old. He could be said to be in the prime of his life at this age. The newcomer's appearance was indeed decent. He had a tall stature and wore a fitted suit. His accessories were extremely exquisite, but they didn't match the environment of the town. Shi Huiyuan was also like this. The two of them were dressed like white-collar workers and gold-collar workers in large corporations. They weren't explorers wandering the wilderness. Plus they clearly knew each other. After interrupting, the person greeted, "I heard that the simulator has been modified. I specifically asked President Ouyang for temporary privileges to come and take a look. I'm not bothering you guys, right?" Huiyuan responded with a faint Mr. Yuan, and didn't say anything else. Mr. Yuan revealed a faint smile as he walked over from the main street. However, he didn't go to Huiyuan's position. Instead, he walked to Luo Nan's side. His tall figure formed a striking height difference with Luo Nan, who was crouching on the ground. Luo Nan wanted to get up, but Mr. Yuan spoke a step ahead of him. In this day and age, no one can eat alone. Everyone can abandon anyone who wants to form a monopoly. Just like a listed company, the rules and profits obtained must reflect the interests of every shareholder. So I have to say, President Ouyang has made a very wise choice. Who is this? Luo Nan finally stood up. He really didn't like the attitude of this person. It should be said that he was disgusted by the large capital of Quantum Corporation. He didn't like all such remarks. Moreover, this person's evaluation of Ouyang Chen was rather arrogant. To think that he was still in the psychic wave network. Did he not even understand basic respect? A light flashed in Luo Nan's mind when he thought of this. He had a general idea of the identity of the person who had come. Sure enough, Huiyuan gave Luo Nan an introduction. "Little Luo, this is Mr. Yuan Fei of the Society's headquarters Incident Investigation Team." So, Xiao Luo? Luo Nan discovered that he had been demoted. In reality, there was no problem with Huiyuan addressing him this way. In fact, it was even more appropriate. He also knew that there might be some meaning behind it. But the human heart was subtle and hard to understand. His heart skipped a beat when he heard this form of address. He didn't feel too good. Luo Nan's performance was wooden in Yuan Fei's eyes. He didn't understand human affairs. Speaking of which, it was quite surprising to see such a fellow at the simulator level. Yuan Fei sized Luo Nan up with a few glances. Luo Nan's powerful posture made the young man feel very uncomfortable. He changed his crouching posture and stood up. Yuan Fei's eyes were clear and bright. He was very arrogant at such a young age. But to be able to enter the simulator level, Xia City had unearthed yet another talented person? Clang. An abrupt sound rang out. It was exceptionally clear in the quiet atmosphere. The gazes of the three people shifted to that side for a moment. They saw a piece of rubble tumble down from the rubble. Luo Nan looked stupidly at his own palm. Did it slip again? No, the feeling this time was much clearer than last time. That piece of rubble had fallen from the palm he had just condensed. It had pierced through his palm and the back of his hand. He subconsciously moved his fingers and examined them over and over again. Finally, he confirmed that his seemingly materialized palm seemed to be condensed from clouds. It was severely lacking in density, lacking in bearing capacity. It could only hold the weight of a piece of rubble for a moment. A slight distraction would cause the palm to dissipate. So it was like this. Yuan Fei shook his head and turned to Huiyuan. "Miss He, the structure of the logic world has indeed become more and more complex after merging with the psychic wave network. We need to increase the maintenance power of technicians. But there's no need to spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. I think this child is quite good for being able to realize high-level applications of the psychic wave network at such a young age. But there's no meaning in forcefully entering the fourth level." Luo Nan was very unhappy to hear these words. What did she mean by forcefully entering? How am I forcefully entering? Just as Luo Nan was about to speak, a full-length mirror materialized out of thin air and stood by his side. It was not Huiyuan's handiwork but Yuan Fei's. "You're Xiao Luo, right? Keep squeezing. It's going to fall apart." Luo Nan turned his head to look and was given a fright. It was unknown when, but his face had become swollen and swollen. His facial features were even a bit out of place. He looked ugly and ridiculous. Sunlight sprinkled down as he spoke, and part of the light even penetrated through his body. He did not look like a normal person no matter how one looked at him. The ability to interfere with the material plane is insufficient. It would have been fine if it was the old version, but the new version has greatly increased the effectiveness of interference power. It's like the increased pressure in the depths of water. If the structural strength is insufficient, it will lead to disintegration. Yuan Fei had one hand in his pocket. It was as if he was sizing up a very interesting toy. He even extended his hand and gestured a few times outside of Luo Nan's body. He turned his head to speak to He Yuan. It looks like the new version has increased the entry threshold. It will be very strenuous for Xia City. Miss He, can you suggest to President Ouyang to let go of technical maintenance and let his colleagues from the other branches share the pressure? He Yuan's brows furrowed slightly. The psychic wave network has been open-sourced for a long time. Technical maintenance is also carried out in Bloodrock Town. I'm talking about the basic structure. Yuan Fei shot a glance at Luo Nan and smirked. Upgrading just like that. It's not just the children of Xia City that are troubled. Luo Nan looked at his increasingly inhuman reflection in the mirror. He tried to straighten it out, but the feeling was completely different from before he entered the wilderness. He felt a clear feeling of stagnation. When his telepathic thoughts cut in, it was as if he had bumped into glue. It was extremely strenuous to control. The more he tried to control it, the more serious the situation of his body's structural spillage became. In the end, his body completely collapsed into a mist, returning to its original state. Chapter 278. Naturally, the practical lessons in the simulator could not continue. He Yuan dealt with Yuan Fei in a simple manner before leading Luo Nan out of the psychic wave network to return to the plane of reality. Luo Nan opened his eyes, but all he saw was pitch-black darkness. A specially modified sealed helmet was already covering his head. It was just that the immersive guidance had yet to be activated. He just stared at this darkness, his thoughts flowing. Yuan Fei, who came from the incident investigation team of headquarters, had just arrived in Xia City. He didn't understand the situation. He saw that Luo Nan was young, yet Luo Nan had entered the 4th level of communication and tried to operate the simulator. He felt that failure was normal and that success was abnormal. He just laughed it off and didn't think about it at all. But Luo Nan was well aware of the situation of his body and soul being unbalanced. He also had enough of the pain of the uncontrollable growth of his soul's strength. Suddenly, the problem of low interference power appeared. Anyone would stare blankly for a period of time when faced with such a contradictory phenomenon. He didn't have to ponder for too long before Bai Xinyan's surprisingly gentle voice transmitted over. How does it feel to be in an out-of-body state on the psychic wave network? Luo Nan was still tangled in the problem of interference power. He wasn't in the mood to respond and he ignored the key elements in her words. Bai Xinyan took it as a tacit agreement. She seemed to sigh and laugh. Only that seemingly open-minded but actually old-fashioned muddle-headed dad of mine thinks that you only have the ability to send your soul. His face has been beaten swollen these past 2 days. He doesn't dare to come out and meet people. Only now did Luo Nan realize what Bai Xinyan was talking about. So it turned out that the misunderstanding of his out-of-body state being treated as a sent soul had already been corrected? Mr. Bai really hadn't appeared these past few days. He Yuan had told him that she had invited him to teach, but he had been tactfully declined. As for the reason behind this, everyone was clear in their hearts. Even though Luo Nan was a factor, it was only a negligible amount. Luo Nan was disinclined to get involved in the conflict between this father and daughter. But then again, a woman who could make such a good-natured old man refuse to forgive her would only make him more vigilant. He was silent for far too long. Bai Xinyan misunderstood his thoughts. You aren't the only young man who hides his head and shows his tail. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's just that it's a bit reckless to act like this to a doctor. Hello, sister. I'm chatting with your boss right now. He Yuan had sent a message to Bai Xinyan, but only to Bai Xinyan. After the latter uttered a rather clear question, he also fell silent. Several seconds later, the inner layer of the sealed helmet lit up without any warning. The guidance process targeted at ability users began. Bai Xinyan's last words came. Tonight's homework is starting. I hope you won't be lazy. Hey. Luo Nan didn't want to talk to Bai Xinyan before, but now he couldn't help but speak. Even an idiot would know that the problem he Yuan and Bai Xinyan were discussing must have something to do with his lack of interference power. He was the person involved. Why should he be excluded? This was a hospital and he felt like he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The whole world knew that he was going to die, but he was the only one who was kept in the dark. Wait a minute, the pessimistic attitude of the two in the private conversation last time, wasn't that what was going on? Luo Nan forgot to accept the guidance for a time. He stared blankly once more. At this time, even with the external neuron protecting his body and the void depository as a buffer, he couldn't stop his chaotic emotions. The next day, Luo Nan's mind was completely outside of the school curriculum. The symptoms of low interference power and the corresponding ominous omens had been plaguing him since last night. According to what he knew, He Yuan and Bai Xinyan had engaged in a long discussion after the incident, but in the end, they were unable to come up with a definite answer. Correspondingly, his altered schedule was facing a second major overhaul. Luo Nan could only wait for news before the revisions were completed. Most of the day passed in a muddle, but Luo Nan didn't receive a new schedule. Club activities began in the middle of the afternoon and the other students got busy. Even Xia Junping, who had been accompanying him for the past 2 days, had a meeting to attend in the student council. Only Luo Nan was alive in the order club. He wasn't in the mood, so he didn't have any activities. Luo Nan was in a really bad mood. He arrived at the tree house in the withered tree sandbar. He sat in the lounge, staring at the weak light in a daze. At first, he seriously pondered over the problem of interference power, but his train of thought was battered and bruised by one knowledge obstacle after another. And there were far too many special circumstances that could only appear in formatting theory. He couldn't find anyone even if he wanted to ask. In the end, his mood only worsened. He did a rough self-analysis in this helpless situation, trying to dispel these negative emotions on his own. Luo Nan had to admit that when He Yuan mentioned that there were only 800 daily users in the entire world on the simulator level, he couldn't help but feel a bit of superiority in addition to being nervous. But right now, these emotions, which had just sprouted a bit, were directly cut off. He couldn't find any other emotions to fill the void for a time, so a feeling of emptiness and disappointment naturally grew. But this wasn't just a change in status or the like. It involved a more fundamental problem. The question that had suddenly appeared a few days ago without an answer was like the impending night. It caused endless shadows to silently creep over him. Luo Nan was alone within the shadows. He didn't have any point of support. Only the layer upon layer of chaotic emotions entangled him, forcing him to ask himself once more. Did his grandfather's formatting theory really have flaws that were hard to resolve? For example, the uncontrollable growth of soul strength? For example, the lack of interference power towards the material plane? Was there anything else besides these 2 points? Was there an end? Luo Nan leaned against the inner wall of the tree hole. Practically all of his energy was being devoured by these cruel questions. He was in a trance, unaware of the passage of time. This lasted until his ear vibrated slightly. Someone was contacting him through the hex ear. He was a bit surprised when he saw the name of the contact person. "Hello, Boss Luo. Are you free right now?" Luo Nan rushed out from the treehouse. He passed through the underwater passageway and high-speed elevator to arrive at the main entrance of Gear. Not long after he arrived, a young man in his 30s arrived along the small path outside the building. It was currently late autumn. The jungle and wetlands were densely interwoven with vegetation, blocking out the sunlight early on. It was much darker than the outside world. The newcomer had deep footsteps and shallow footsteps. He walked quite arduously. When he walked into the area illuminated by the lights in front of Gear, he grinned. Beads of sweat had already appeared on his slightly plump face. "Boss Luo, this place of yours wasn't easy to find. This place is pretty good." Chapter 279. The person who came was none other than the mentally enhanced Papercut, who fought shoulder to shoulder with Luo Nan on the night of the incident at Frost River Reality. Frankly speaking, this old man's appearance was far too ordinary. Luo Nan nearly didn't recognize him when they met again. Fortunately, Luo Nan still remembered this awakened. This awakened had a slightly bloated body as well as that amiable smiling face. Even if Luo Nan didn't receive this treatment most of the time, Papercut's opinion of Luo Nan was mainly that his immature attitude had harmed the team. However, various facts later proved that Luo Nan was correct, so there was no need for this opinion to exist. Just call me Papercut. It feels weird to add Mr. to my nickname. Papercut grinned out of habit. Then don't call me Boss Luo. Boss Luo is your nickname, right? Papercut's smile was very infectious. I know that you have quite a few nicknames, but I won't change it. Everything goes according to the flow of the tongue. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. Papercut waved his hand before Luo Nan could say anything. Don't get tangled up in these minor details. I came to teach today. I'm sorry. Something happened at the last minute, so I pushed the time forward. Luo Nan responded politely, I'm the one troubling you. He invited Papercut into the building as he spoke. Papercut was one of Luo Nan's teachers for general knowledge training. He was responsible for imparting the practical course Soul Strength Activation Techniques. Papercut emphasized when talking about the course, this course is actually quite late. The reason why it was brought forward. It's because of my special circumstances. My interference power is low. Do I need to do a field experiment to verify it? Papercut was stunned. He turned to look at Luo Nan with a bit of helplessness. Boss Luo, you're still young. You think too much. Luo Nan blinked. Am I wrong? You really are. Luo Nan couldn't be blamed for thinking too much. The introduction of this course in his old schedule clearly stated that it was a practical course on mental interference with matter. Now that there was a problem with his interference power, Papercut still deliberately brought up the course. The reason for this was very clear. Could this be considered a re-examination of a terminal illness? That being said, Papercut's course itself was quite interesting. With such a nickname, Papercut's specialty was to use a special method to cut out paper tools and use soul force to endow them with all sorts of functions. Papercut had revealed his hand to Luo Nan in the tea room on the 3rd floor of Gear. He manipulated a small paper doll and performed a comical pantomime. Then he performed a set of military boxing on the table. His movements were agile and lifelike as if he really had a life of his own. The little paper man's strength was also quite impressive. The teacups on the table were kicked all over the place. In the end, he even practiced stone lock, throwing the teacups up and down as if he was a street performer. Even though Luo Nan's mind was in a mess, he couldn't help but laugh when he saw the mini paper man's strenuous performance. His mood unwittingly turned for the better. This is the most basic application. After that, it is further divided into activation style and manipulation style. The former focused on simulating spirituality, while the latter focused on precise manipulation. I'm an animation type, so I'm more casual and often do some auxiliary work. I've seen your information. You're a precision type, spiritual enhanced, and your pure observational abilities are so capricious. It's very likely that you're talented in precise manipulation. Papercut began to paint a beautiful future for Luo Nan. The society has combat machines specifically manufactured for the control class. Actually, every control class should be an extremely powerful engineer. They can fight and repair. They are powerful and safe. Luo Nan's eyes drooped and he laughed. In order to do this, he first had to satisfy the basic requirements of interference power. If soul strength was unable to effectively interfere with the material plane, then everything else was meaningless. Speaking of repairs, however, he suddenly thought of the Tai Chi ball of Divine Yu Jim. The core component of the Tai Chi ball seemed to be a precise machine. Luo Nan had heard Shui Lei mention it, but in the end, it hadn't been repaired. It was still tossed in the Daoguan. This matter needed to be handled properly. The maintenance engineers of the society were certainly a level stronger than those outside. Luo Nan's mind was a bit scattered, but he quickly recovered. He concentrated on listening to Papercut's lecture. Today, whether it was training, teaching, or symptom review, Papercut only taught elementary subjects. He taught the basic techniques of soul strength acting on materials. Papercut chose a special kind of talisman paper for his practice. It was said that it was obtained from another psychic of the society, Mr. Gao, whom Luo Nan had yet to meet. It was made from specially cultivated peach wood and bamboo pulp. The ratio was extremely meticulous, and it was one of the materials most suited to converge with soul strength. As for Papercut himself, he had a meticulous and patient personality. From the very beginning, he began to manually operate the talisman. He broke down the steps and explained the few special points of force for the soul strength to be used clearly. From the principles to the operation, everything was extremely clear. Logically speaking, the difficulty shouldn't be high with such thorough preparations. However, the development of the situation simply followed the most pessimistic predictions. Luo Nan's learning process didn't go smoothly. It was already 6 o'clock in the evening. Luo Nan and Papercut held their breaths and focused their minds under the illumination of the lights in the tea room. They stared at the crude paper man on the table. This little thing, which had just been cut, stood up shakily, taking steps with great difficulty. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Then it fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Oh no! Luo Nan slapped the table with both hands, bringing about a gentle breeze that lifted the paper man up. Then there was the stream of air that Luo Nan exhaled with a long sigh. The little thing fluttered under the table. This series of movements was much more nimble than its previous struggling appearance. Luo Nan knew that he had lost control of himself. He hurriedly said, "Sorry," and got up, wanting to pick up the paper man. Papercut held him down. With a thought, the small paper man 5 meters away immediately came to life. It was like a ruffian monkey. It leaped and hopped, climbing the table leg and charged onto the table in a few steps. Luo Nan felt more and more ashamed when he compared the two. He laughed bitterly and sat back on the chair. He looked up into the sky and stared blankly. This doesn't make sense. Papercut scratched his head endlessly, but he couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. His patience hadn't run out yet, so he pulled Luo Nan and said, "How about we sort it out a bit more and start from the beginning?" Luo Nan had no reason to give up when faced with such a teacher. He forced himself to raise his spirits and grabbed the small paper man on the table. His fingertips tapped across the paper man's head and torso in succession. There are a total of 4 soul strength focus points. They form 6 basic resonance lines to realize basic control. Luo Nan paused a bit upon speaking up to this point. He then said, "This is actually a kind of irregular deformation of a prism. It belongs to the structural changes in the operation of energy and information. The paper man is just a medium. The basic prism structure is the support. You chose to start with this structure. Is it because it's a bit similar to my format pyramid?" Chapter 280. Luo Nan calmed down. He fiddled with the small paper man between his fingers, then tossed it back onto the table a few seconds later. This is because the prismatic structure requires a certain amount of strength. If the strength you gave me was equivalent to a steel structure, then what I gave me would be a spider web at most. Strength. It's strength. That's right. Papercut was helpless. Of course, he knew that the crux of the problem was the strength of the structure. If he were to investigate further, it would be the problem of the interference of the mental plane with the material plane. But these were all superficial phenomena. Who could tell him that a mentally enhanced user with superb mental senses, who could send his soul out of his body as if it were nothing, and whose mental cultivation had nearly reached the B rank standard, couldn't even do the most basic thing of controlling objects with his mind? What was going on? In the end, there was no answer to this question. Not only was Papercut unable to get any results, but Bai Xinyan, who knew about this long ago, kept it a secret when Luo Nan went to the hospital for treatment. She didn't give Luo Nan any information that could be used as a reference. Luo Nan originally wanted to ask He Yuan, but after some thought he gave up on this thought for the time being. Problems on the mental plane were largely self-perception. If even he couldn't figure out what was going on, then it was impossible to count on others. The terrible state of affairs undoubtedly affected Luo Nan's mood. The following training sessions at the Frost River Waterway were simply disastrous. The quality was extremely terrible. The amount of time Luo Nan could last was even less than in the morning. Compared to last night, his endurance had dropped by 20%. Luo Nan saw the relevant results and made preparations for additional training. However, Bai Xinyan didn't express anything. She let him pass the final moments of his time in the healing pod in peace. "I still have to learn new things tonight. It's best if I take a nap and relax. Alright, don't be late." Bai Xinyan made medical records as she waved her hand to let Luo Nan leave. In the past, Luo Nan would probably rejoice, but now he thought about it a bit more. Was this attitude a part of happy, fast healing? Sure enough, when a person is about to die, nothing is taboo. Luo Nan thought about the results of his peeping from 2 days ago, and his mood turned even worse. He really wanted to crack open Bai Xinyan's skull and figure out just what kind of state he was in her eyes. Or perhaps he wanted to peep again. The problem was, how could he have such an opportunity every day? Luo Nan left Renai Hospital with his mind in a jumbled mess. Tonight he had already made an appointment to go to Boshan Manor to learn breathing techniques from Hall Master Xiu. Last time he went to the Daoguan, Luo Nan had the phantom flying car as a means of transportation. He had already returned the flying car to Xie Junping this morning. Right now he was riding a low-altitude public transport, rushing towards the River Wu district under the curtain of night. The first thing Luo Nan did after getting into the car was give his aunt a call. He informed her that he would be staying at the Daoguan tonight. In fact, he had already used Shui Lei's tiger skin to ask for leave from his aunt yesterday to confirm the situation of not returning at night. But he knew his aunt's temperament very well. Right now he had to make another phone call to comfort her. Otherwise, according to Madame Luo Shuqing, she would have personally brought him to pay a visit to Gym Master Xiu for his first official lesson. By the time he finally ended the call, they were already halfway through the journey. At this hour the bus was no longer as crowded as it was during the day. There were only a dozen or so people on the bus. They were all groggy or playing games with their wristbands. Luo Nan sat at the back. He lowered his head and fiddled with his things. However, he was different from the others. He wasn't fiddling with an electronic device in his hand. Instead he was fiddling with a thin greenish-yellow paper. This was a special talisman paper that Papercut had given him. It was personally made by the psychic Mr. Gao. The special material was more suitable for the transmission of energy and information. In the hands of a true expert, this talisman paper could be used to deal with enemies. It was a bit extravagant to use it for practice. But it would be fine if he could really get some ideas out of it. Luo Nan followed the technique Papercut taught him. He slowly operated and tore the talisman paper into a palm-sized paper man. The incorporeal prismatic structure took shape as a whole. At the same time, abundant soul strength poured down, completely submerging the paper man. Luo Nan could sense the texture of the paper, the rough edges of the torn paper, the crisscrossing creases. Not a single detail could be hidden from him. But under the effect of soul strength, the paper man in his palm merely rolled around in a half-dead state. It then became motionless. His soul strength nearly crushed his body. It seemed to have no practical significance on the paper man. It's still like this. Back at Frost River Reality, his support for Shui Weiluan and the other special police officers was no problem at all. The effects of controlling the Wraith sign, influencing cat eyes, and even his own mental attack were real. But why couldn't it work when it truly fell on materials? Luo Nan looked out the window. The colorful night curtain of the metropolis was like fluttering cotton. It was empty and hard to see the real thing. His mind naturally extended out, passing through the deep void and flowing within the sea of lights of the metropolis. His perception became more real. Within the clairvoyance of his perception, there were tens of thousands of living beings, the convergence of stars and the meandering Milky Way. There were marvelous layers within, majestic and hazy. It was like a grand world, gorgeous and magnificent. But when such a grand structure of the Star River was cast onto the small paper man, not even a ripple was stirred up. The prismatic structure was still as strong as a spider web. He couldn't even feel any connection between the two. An incorporeal and ice-cold barrier separated his consciousness from the real thing. They were infinitely close, but they had never truly fused. It was like a dream and reality. Could it be that this power was all fabricated? Could it be that the crazy ravings of his grandfather only existed on the plane of imagination? No, this didn't make sense. The beam of light from Luo Nan's consciousness cut through the Star River. It definitely wasn't limited to a radius of 1 or 2 kilometers. There were many fulcrum points within the enormous metropolis. There were normal people, awakened ones, ablatum knights, crows, darksider races. They were real, giving him feedback at all times. How could this kind of perception be a dream? Luo Nan arrived at the Divine Yu Gym above Boshan building in a daze. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. The students of the Daoguan had long since dispersed. Only Shui Lei remained here. He came out early to welcome Luo Nan. "Nanster, the gym master is waiting for you inside." Luo Nan suppressed his chaotic state of mind. He was a bit embarrassed. I'm late. Not at all. It's mainly because the Daoguan doesn't accept new business. We finished our business at 8 o'clock. You're actually quite early. It's mainly because you're just getting started. You'll need some time. Relax. I'll be your protector tonight. Shuelei pulled Luonan inside. The lights in the front and middle courtyards of the Daoguan had already been turned off. It was late in the autumn night. Luonan walked along the winding corridor. Luckily, Shuelei's voice was loud. It diluted this feeling quite a bit. Luonan was quite baffled. You're spending the night at the Daoguan as well? Of course. I've always been the gym master's assistant. Yes, I'm also an interpreter. But Luonan and Shuelei had already entered the backyard in the blink of an eye. The light of the humanoid stone lanterns illuminated the front courtyard. Light and shadow separated, like an exquisite oil painting. Chapter 281. Luonan and Shuelei walked into the room. There were no lights on inside. The lights from outside only illuminated the entrance. Most of the other areas were filled with shadows, making it hard to see clearly. Shuelei turned his head to look for Zhou Xian. Luonan relied on the advantage of his mental senses to lock onto Zhou Xian's position a step earlier. Zhou Xian was sitting on the cork floor, leaning against the wall on one side of the corridor. His left leg was crossed and his right leg was upright. His sitting posture was casual. Not far away from him was the Tai Chi ball. He didn't know if it was because of the environment, but the current Zhou Xian was silent, almost gloomy. He did not react to the two young men who came in. Dojo Master Nanster is here. Shuelei finally saw where Zhou Xian was. He walked over and whispered. Zhou Xian grunted, then let's begin. Her straightforward and direct attitude made Luonan and Shuelei a bit stupefied. No matter what the two youngsters thought, Zhou Xian simply got up from the floor and walked to Luonan's side. His figure was tall and thin. He was a head taller than Luonan, who had yet to fully develop. He gave off quite a bit of pressure when he stood. The time I requested is from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., a total of 6 hours. Ideally, 6 hours a day would be enough for the first stage of learning. I asked you to come a little earlier today so that I can teach you basic techniques and also do some tests to get a feel for you. Luonan obediently complied. Although this gym master Xiao did not engage in any pleasantries or opening remarks, going straight to the main topic rather strangely, his words were still logical and clear. It was unknown where Shuelei's so-called translation came from. Luonan immediately complied with Zhou Xian's request. He lay flat on the sleeping mat that had already been prepared. Shuelei, on the other hand, lit a pot of incense in a very exaggerated manner, saying that it had the effect of helping people relax. The light was dim and the fragrance lingered in the air. In such an environment, it was not difficult to relax. Luonan's eyes narrowed slightly. He slowly adjusted his breathing and soon entered a state. At this time, Zhou Xian suddenly asked, "Have you learned other breathing techniques before?" "Yes, there is." Luonan had been practicing the chanting breathing technique since he was young. The majority of its functions were in visualization, but he also started with breathing. Also, he had obtained an extremely good demonstration from this inconceivable little girl Ruiwen some time ago. She had comprehended the rhythm of soul breathing. Soul breathing is also considered breathing, right? Luonan believed that he had some experience. Zhou Xian continued to ask, "Have you entered meditation?" "You mean the stationary state?" "Yes." At the side, Shuelei said happily, "That's good. You already have a very good foundation. You'll definitely improve at lightning speed." Zhou Xian glanced at Shuelei but did not say anything. He just let Luonan continue to relax. At the same time, Zhou Xian began to explain to Luonan the essentials of adjusting his breathing. In the beginning, Luonan only spoke in general terms. But under this sort of atmosphere, Luonan subconsciously and unconsciously followed the methods he had described. He carried out experiments. Zhou Xian probably had an accurate grasp of Luonan's state. He suddenly changed the way he spoke. He was shorter, directly touching on the deviation that occurred during Luonan's attempts, and he corrected it. Sometimes she would directly reach out and press on Luonan's body. She wanted Luonan's breathing and thoughts to be mobilized and concentrated in these areas. In the beginning, the taste of having someone controlling his breathing was unpleasant. Luo Nan controlled his breathing as he split his attention to receive guidance. His nerves were taut and there was no way he could relax at all. But Luo Nan had a foundation in the end. He soon discovered that many of the essentials Zhou Xian imparted to him happened to coincide with his current understanding. It gave him quite a bit of foresight when it came to certain details, and the specific control of his breathing became more unhurried. Moreover, Zhou Xian's teachings were not harsh on the details. It was like a faintly discernible lamp that led Luo Nan in front of him, so that he would not get lost. Luo Nan still followed Luo Nan's own habits and actions. It didn't take long for Luo Nan to adapt. His mind settled down. He controlled the intensity of his breathing, making it faintly discernible between his mouth and nose. His mind first resided in his mouth and nose. Then it moved to his throat, chest, lower abdomen, tailbone, and so on. He also visualized in reverse, changing back and forth. In the end, his breath became continuous. It was impossible to distinguish the direction, and it gradually enshrouded his entire body. Luo Nan's body became slightly hot under this marvelous feeling. It was as if he was wrapped in a warm cloud. It was similar to a sauna, but it was not that stuffy. It was rather transparent. In the end, Luo Nan's energy was completely focused on sensing the changes. He naturally blocked out Zhou Xian's whispers. In the end, even his body's senses became fuzzy. It was as if Luo Nan had transformed into a cloud, drifting in the void. The cloud chi expanded and contracted, showing the difference between inside and outside. But when it came down to it, it was a rhythm of entering and exiting. That's right, it was a bit like Ruiwen. Her breath resonated at the pinnacle of perfection, and her body and soul were blended together. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes as if he had awoken from a dream. Shuelei followed Zhou Xian's instructions and checked the time on his wristband. 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Shuelei smiled. From the time you laid down until now, it's been a total of 320 seconds. Luo Nan was stunned. That's short. He thought that time had passed very quickly, at least an hour or two, but he didn't expect it to be so short. If one only counted the time when he was fully engrossed, it would be less than a minute. Zhou Xian glanced at Shuelei's wristband. 7 seconds. 7 seconds. Spirit galloping, heart illuminating the 8 extremities. 7 seconds isn't bad, but it's not short either. Luo Nan didn't understand at all. Translator Shui finally appeared at this time. He praised, "Sure enough, there is a foundation. The meditative state you just entered is actually a process of body self-examination. It's like turning on a device, reading and loading. The faster your brain, the higher the efficiency. 7 seconds of inner vision, obtaining the edict of void and stillness, is quite amazing." Gym Master Xiao declined to comment on Shuelei's words. You can't rely on the void. You can't stay full for long. Remember that breathing rhythm. We will proceed to the next step. Though it was hard to understand, it really did seem quite amazing. Luo Nan couldn't help but have a different kind of confidence in Zhou Xian's teachings. He recalled the feeling from before and nodded solemnly. 2 minutes later, Luo Nan entered the strange state of his body's invisibility once more under Zhou Xian's guidance. His body was like a cloud. Warm heat was constantly accumulating, but the rhythm of entering and exiting was there. It expanded and contracted all the time. The heat was not static, but it flowed endlessly. Luo Nan couldn't see it clearly at first, but after familiarizing himself with it, his senses grew sharper. Slowly, he was able to perceive substance within the invisibility of the cloud. According to Zhou Xian's theory, meditative state was just the initial stage of cognition. Cultivation required one to eliminate the established concept of the body, using the feeling of a meditative state to reconstruct it. This wasn't to let one's imagination run wild in the mind. The body was still the body and the aura was still the aura. One just needed to take a complete form. Luo Nan was familiar with this method. Wasn't this his method of drawing simple sketches? He didn't care about the fineness of the form. He focused on the charm and characteristics. However, Zhou Xian gave him a clear image. Chapter 282. His body was a mountain that was densely planted with thick soil. It could bear the weight of sunlight, rain, and dew as well as resist storms and lightning. Qi was like flowing water, meandering and flowing. It could accumulate the spiritual beauty of a mountain and give life to all living things. Here, the body was the foundation, the most important. It determined the structure of matter just like a mountain. There were always ups and downs. Vital qi was a function determined by the body's foundation. It was like the flow of water following the shape of a mountain, showing the warmth and coldness of yin and yang. The two of them referenced each other. As the state of concentration deepened, the minute details gradually became clearer. The distinction between illusion and reality was made, and some of it appeared. It was as if a painting of mountains and rivers had unfolded before Luo Nan's eyes. Clear streams meandered within the unbroken mountain terrain, following the flow. Everywhere it passed, there were some places that could stay, some places that could move, and some places that could be used were the complete opposite. With the difference, the feeling of substance was even clearer. Gradually, there were some places where the energy was circulating and accumulating, like a calm lake or deep pool, dark whirlpools forming. This was the so-called aperture point that Zhou Xian wanted him to pay special attention to. It was a place where spiritual energy was stored and nurtured. Luo Nan's consciousness gradually confirmed his position. He even compared it with the established concept of his body. The top of his head, his chest, his lower abdomen, as well as the palms of his hands and the soles of his feet. These acupoints seemed to resonate with each other, causing ripples to appear. The shock waves sliced through, and the cloud-like illusory feeling gradually retreated. His body's perception reappeared, but compared to before, he already had a completely new understanding. Just like that old philosophical proposition, seeing a mountain is a mountain, seeing water is water. Seeing a mountain is not a mountain, seeing water is not water. Seeing a mountain is still a mountain, seeing water is still water. Luo Nan's mind was muddled when he heard Zhou Xian speak of these things. But now that he truly encountered them, he felt that he understood them quite well. However, Zhou Xian had only mentioned this step. He did not explicitly state what to do next. Luo Nan's thoughts were a bit scattered. Originally, he wanted to leave the fixed space and ask Zhou Xian about the trick to the next step. However, the resonating pattern between his acupuncture points and his body made him think of Rui Wen's marvelous technique of body and soul merging. However, after experiencing it in detail, it was still different. Luo Nan was far from reaching Rui Wen's realm of mixing and merging as one. The resonance within his body only occurred between a few acupuncture points. With the acupoints as the ends, they were connected to each other, forming a blurry structure. It was a little chaotic, a little complicated, and also a little familiar. If he made some slight adjustments, Luo Nan's body still felt a bit fuzzy right now, so he subconsciously viewed it as a correctable drawing. He moved the endpoints, merged the lines, and made a few adjustments. The fuzzy and chaotic structure became orderly, turning into a pyramid-like structure of vertebral bodies. Luo Nan suddenly felt that something was off. He wanted to open his eyes, but a shout came from the outside world at this time. Continue. The voice was deep and it suppressed Luo Nan's surging mind. Luo Nan's mind swayed a few times, but in the end he maintained his fixed state. At this moment, the image of mountains and rivers had become blurry and empty, replaced by a more familiar scene. A pyramid rotated in the void. To be precise, it was the format pyramid, a visualization diagram. The sudden change in imagery caused Luo Nan to be a bit perplexed. His senses were also affected and became chaotic. But this situation didn't persist for too long. The visualization diagram rotated in his fixed state, and all the chaotic information was collected within. It was orderly and orderly, as if there was a central axis. The bones, muscles, and even the trillions of blood vessels and fibers of his entire body moved. A single movement led to 100 movements, 1,000 movements, and 10,000 movements. There was no chaos at all. Luo Nan was no stranger to this feeling. He had been guided by the archetype format in the complete version of the Frost River waterway system some time ago at Frost River Reality. He ignited the virtual format of fire, using it as an axis and many aspects linked together. The image of mountains and rivers and the format of fire were very good, but they couldn't compare to the significance of the visualization diagram for Luo Nan. Luo Nan had already gotten used to coexisting with the visualization diagram over the past 5 years. The visualization diagram represented formatting theory, and it was the truth that he revered. Therefore, the visualization diagram occupied the most central position without a doubt when it came out. The other sensations either revolved around the visualization diagram, fluctuating and fluctuating, or they were simply annihilated. Luckily, Luonan still remembered what he came here for tonight. Though his direction was a bit off, the roots of his breathing were still there. His breathing rhythm was only messed up for a moment before it returned to normal. Though the image of mountains and rivers was already blurry and indistinct, the feeling of the circulation and accumulation of vital energy was still there. It was just that the natural charm that followed the flow of energy within the closed visualization diagram was gone. There were only layers of steaming hot air that accumulated endlessly, heading toward the inscribed sphere in the central region of the visualization diagram. In Luonan's visualization mode, if he only cared about himself, the inscribed sphere would contain his internal organs and the circulation of blood and energy. And according to Zhou Xianyu's teachings, vital energy symbolized the activation of bodily functions. What would it look like to gather vital energy like this? Zhou Xianyu did not explain. The visualization diagram rotated endlessly, and at the same time, layer after layer of vital energy surged inside. The momentum was vast and there seemed to be some changes. But there were no changes. The inscribed sphere was empty. It was like a black hole. No matter how much vital energy and heat accumulated, it was devoured by this emptiness. There was no end to it. Luonan's mind followed the circulation of vital energy and entered the inscribed sphere. This was the first time he had learned formatting theory. Moreover, it was natural. Clearly, he had made great progress in the field of visualization. This should have been a good thing, but the scene of his inner vision caused Luonan's mind to stiffen. He was flooded with that dark color that he could not tell was real or illusory. It was hard for him to feel anything else. Luonan's current state of mind was absolutely not suitable for meditating. But the shout from outside suppressed the great waves that could make him leave his meditative state. It also firmly pressed him in this space, allowing him to see things more clearly. Countless thick chains penetrated a dark color within the depths of the space. They crisscrossed and intertwined with each other, forming a complex structure that made one's scalp go numb. It was like an inescapable net. It was like a black prison. Yes, the inscribed sphere of the visualization diagram was also where the heavily chained crow came from. But Luonan never imagined that the seemingly endless chain that could penetrate through the layers of the void would actually have this sort of appearance, this sort of form hidden deep within the visualization diagram. Faced with such a deep space, the surging vital energy that he had felt before was simply insignificant smoke. Wisps of energy curled up in spirals, and under the enormous internal pressure, the vital energy sank deep into the depths. There was a bit of fiery light in the depths where the chains interweaved. It seeped through the gaps of the chains, but Luonan's mind could not feel any heat. The cold chains sucked away all the heat halfway, leaving only the flickering fiery light that hooked a bit of his mind. It was faintly discernible. My heart is a prison. Suddenly, Luonan thought of the first phrase of the 16 words formula. The crashing vibrations rang out once more, and Luonan's mind was finally unable to control itself. It was sent out of his meditative state. The image of mountains and rivers, the visualization diagram, all vanished without a trace. Instead, his lower abdomen felt a bit hot, but that was all. Luonan blinked his eyes blankly, and the first person he saw was Zhou Xianyu. Shuelei was next to the gym master. He was tongue-tied, and it took a while before he asked, why are you sitting up? Chapter 283. Sit up? Yes, he had sat up, and he was even sitting in the pyramid posture, completely ignoring the mountain and river imagery that Zhou Xianyu had taught him. Luonan gaped, speechless. On the other hand, Zhou Xianyu was not all that surprised. He looked Luonan up and down a few times, then slowly said, breathing in and out. Fusing new and old techniques into a furnace is a good thing. Shuelei let out a sigh of relief. That's good. Unexpectedly, Zhou Xianyu's next words were, it's a pity that I can't use my skills on myself. Shuelei blinked. Dojo master, I can't translate what you're saying. He looked at Luonan. Luonan's head was lowered in contemplation. He didn't react at all. In the end, he could only ask, Master, you mean? Xiao Xinyu didn't respond to Shuelei. He gazed at Luo Nan for some time before saying, I taught you to visualize the image of mountains and rivers, but I didn't tell you to take out an iceberg. The weather is cold and the ground is frozen. When water swims through the cracks in the ice, most of it will still melt. Water can moisturize things, but ice can crush people. Luo Nan pondered for a moment. He raised his head and said, Please guide me, Gym Master. Shuelei looked at the Gym Master, then looked at Luo Nan. He finally confirmed that he, the translator, was about to lose his job. He shrunk to the side, not uttering a word. He just pricked up his ears. Xiao Xinyu pondered as he said, Rome wasn't built in a single day. I don't really understand your visualization technique, but I vaguely feel that from the inside to the outside, it's very strict and majestic. It's a magnificent sight. This is of course very good. It's a pity that this iceberg doesn't truly belong to you. The more majestic the iceberg is, the smaller you are. People are affected by the law and the law is affected by people. This is your problem. This dojo master Xiao had never been good with words. When he conversed with others, he would always say what he was thinking. His reasoning was not very clear and he often used metaphors, making it hard for others to listen. Shuelei's eyes spun as he listened to Luo Nan. Luckily, Luo Nan combined his own circumstances with the heavily intersecting dark chains and the prison in his heart. He had a general understanding of what was going on. It was precisely because he understood what Xiao Xinyu said that he was truly amazed by Xiao Xinyu's eyesight. This dojo master was undoubtedly truly capable. But he was also more and more confused about the underlying causes of his family's situation. A while passed before Luo Nan asked, Why doesn't it belong to me? I'm the one cultivating it. Is it really you? Xiao Xinyu's rhetorical question left Luo Nan speechless. From the first day he started researching formatting theory, he had been walking a path that relied on external forces. The spiritual medicine, the dark side of life form, the sacrificial framework. These external items had played a decisive role behind the rapid growth of his soul's strength. All he did was set up a shelf. Even his arrogance was learned from his grandfather. While Luo Nan was in a daze, Xiao Xinyu slowly stood up and walked to the side of the Tai Chi ball. There was no light in the room. From a distance, only a blurry figure could be seen. Luo Nan and Shuelei glanced at each other. They both got up and walked over. Xiao Xinyu didn't care about them. He directly moved the Tai Chi ball, causing it to spin in the bowl tray on the ground. The metal ball, which was half the height of a person and weighed more than 100 kilograms, spun with great momentum. Even the cork floor was shaking. This is an iceberg. Luo Nan nodded. He automatically replaced iceberg with formatting theory in his mind. Now you have this. Xiao Xinyu continued to speak. He pointed at the tray below. Due to the spinning heavy metal ball, the tray below swayed endlessly as well. Luo Nan stared at it without blinking. He took the tray and compared it to his own situation. This analogy was very intuitive. Even the ignorant Shuelei understood. Gym Master, are you saying that Nanster's cultivation speed is too fast? He can't get rid of his tail, so his luck isn't smooth? But then Xiao Xinyu shook his head. He's being rejected. Shuelei was immediately stupefied. Luo Nan suddenly raised his head from the side. Xiao Xinyu's palm pressed against the outer edge of the metal ball, and the rolling and spinning ball came to a stop with a hum. Xiao Xinyu had already opened the outer shell of the ball while it was still swaying slightly. He took out the complex mechanical device from within the cavity. You should be talking about this. Xiao Xinyu spoke calmly. To put it simply, the cultivation of a human is like drawing a circle. The self is the center of the circle. Layer by layer, the circle expands outwards. The range of control grows larger and larger and the weight grows heavier and heavier. But no matter what, the heart must be unhindered up and down. Following the heart is the right path. If it's heavy and cumbersome, difficult to move, then it's called being too big to get rid of. Luo Nan first looked at the mechanical device. He was lost in thought for a while and then he looked at Xiao Xinyu. Then right now you're just a burden. You're a carrier. Xiao Xinyu placed the mechanical device back into the cavity, and he let the metal ball spin once more. I think you know just how much strength you have at the center of the circle. Luo Nan thought of the inscribed sphere's depths. There was a massive fire that was completely devoid of heat. He took a deep breath. But I'm still inside. Only a part of it. Zhou Xian responded faintly. This technique isn't yours. You're just endlessly pouring water on it, turning it into layer after layer of ice cubes, making it expand even more, making it even heavier. Perhaps you can borrow its power, but you must do so under its existing rules. You can't overstep them in the slightest. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any content regarding the feedback of the human body within its rules. The human body is the foundation of cultivation. It has a soul and is incorporeal. It's nothing more than a pavilion in the air. Yet you've built it to such a scale, reversing the real and the false. This is the main reason why your body and soul are unbalanced. Luonan was a bit conflicted by the first half of Zhou Xian's description, but when he heard the words must do so under its existing rules, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot. The doubts he had on the bus on the way here were illuminated by the lightning, and they were torn to shreds. Yeah, why didn't he think of this? Sensing the river of stars, the feedback from his believers, these were solid achievements. They were all changes on the mental plane, and they existed within the framework of formatting theory. On the contrary, he had entered the rules set by President Ouyang Qin in the simulator layer of the psychic wave network. His control over the small paper men involved the material plane, a domain that formatting theory was unable to touch upon. One was efficacious and the other was ineffective. The true reason lay here. Though this was only Zhou Xian's personal opinion, he did not know the concrete contents of formatting theory. He also did not know the awkward situation Luonan faced. For Zhou Xian to be able to make an inference, and for it to coincide seamlessly with reality, was something that could hardly be described as a coincidence. Luonan stood there in a daze. The darkness of the training field surrounded him, and the sound of the metal ball grinding and turning crushed all the way into his heart. Zhou Xian's voice seeped in like fine sand. My generation has been influenced by external techniques. At first, they are not good enough to be called imprisonment. Next, they are not good enough to be called overturning. Finally, they are not good enough to be called parasitism. Your current situation is probably somewhere between imprisonment and overturning. Gym Master. This was the first time Luonan interrupted Zhou Xian's speech since the start of tonight's lesson. Luonan stared fixedly at the wizened middle-aged man's sunken eye sockets. It was deep and gloomy and it was hard to distinguish color. But there was a heavy force that pressed down on Luonan's heart. Luonan used the strength of his teeth to speak. Gym Master, are you saying that the technique I cultivate in is flawed? Zhou Xian's answer was probably the most fluent that Luonan could remember. Chapter 284. Cough Gym Master. On the other side, Shuelei was a bit flustered. He knew the obsession in Luonan's heart. In layman terms, anything that involved formatting theory was Luonan's reverse scale. He was really afraid that Luonan would turn around and leave in anger. He did his best to salvage the situation. He hoped that Zhou Xian would not speak too harshly and leave some leeway for Luonan to turn around. Unfortunately, his eyes were blocked in the darkness. Even if he did, the possibility of Zhou Xian changing his words was close to zero, given his temperament. The Tai Chi ball continued to spin endlessly in the bowl tray. The luminous patterns on its surface gradually became clear amidst the grinding sounds. Zhou Xian turned his gaze. He had no intention of speaking again. As for Luonan, the end of his gaze stopped on Zhou Xian's face. He had been like this ever since Luonan said without a doubt. But he did not make the next move. He stood in place like a stone statue. Even his breathing was sealed. Shuelei looked left and right. In the end he could not continue. He could only hang his head and pray in secret, hoping that the heavens would open their eyes and not cause trouble. For a time, there was only the grinding Tai Chi ball in the spacious room. It rolled from one heart to another. An unknown amount of time passed. Luonan, whose entire body was stiff, suddenly took a step forward. He raised a hand and broke through the incorporeal layer of stone. He reached out and pressed the rolling Tai Chi ball. The metal ball rubbed against his palm. Due to the uneven application of external force, the metal ball bounced twice, nearly flipping over. It stabilized with great difficulty, rocking back and forth in the bowl tray. The luminous patterns naturally disappeared. Xiu Xinyu furrowed his brows and raised his eyes to meet Luo Nan's gaze. The gym master didn't like to be disturbed when he was fiddling with the Tai Chi ball. Shui Lei's heart beat wildly. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out of the situation before him. A few days ago he suggested that Luo Nan come to the Daoguan to learn breathing techniques. He never imagined that this would happen. But the following development was not as pessimistic as Shui Lei imagined. Luo Nan was not angry at being criticized for his formatting theory. Xiu Xinyu did not get angry when the Tai Chi ball stopped spinning. When the monotonous sound that could move people's hearts faded away, Luo Nan's whisper grew clearer. Gym Master Xiu, the only flaw in my technique is that it does not take the body into consideration. Am I right? I don't believe that it is your technique. Xiu Xinyu also stretched out his hand and pressed it against the Tai Chi ball. This was the second time he had done something similar. At the same time, Luo Nan found it hard to accept these words. At this moment, both of their palms were pressed against the Tai Chi ball. The metal ball became even quieter, unable to move. In this subtle contest of strength, Xiu Xinyu slowly replied, the right path of cultivation in the world should be from the inside to the outside, from me to him. Water moves according to the mountains, qi moves according to the body, and the charm is within. What does it have to do with me, if it's just a myriad of phenomena outside the body? Shui Lei felt dizzy listening to Xiu Xinyu's pronouncements, but Luo Nan understood each and every word. Not only was it personally related, but Xiu Xinyu's words touched upon a concept Luo Nan was most familiar with. Me. Why did it sound so ironic? The 16 words written on the title page of Grandpa's notebook were all preceded by the word, I. My heart is a prison, my heart is a furnace. My heart calls for a mirror, my heart calls for a country. Wasn't formatting theory rooted in me? How could it not be? It was this root that caused Luo Nan to blurt out his rebuttal. It can't be. When I cultivate, I always use the me as the axis. What do you use to determine the me? Xiu Xinyu did not give Luo Nan the chance to continue arguing. He directly pierced through Luo Nan's final line of defense. The me of cultivation has the structure of the body and bones, the circulation of energy and blood, and the changes of movement and stillness. It must exhaust the nature of matter. Only by being unprepared can one guarantee every step and every seal without any mistakes. You have failed to do this. Luo Nan stopped talking. He listened in silence. Using pure consciousness as a reference without any material foundation, it is only natural for one to make mistakes. If it were someone else, their body and soul would be out of balance to a certain degree. They would be restrained and it would be difficult to move even an inch. But you are like a towering iceberg, expanding layer by layer. There are no signs of restrictions. Xiu Xinyu did not continue speaking after this, but his meaning was clear and unmistakable. No matter how vast and powerful the structure of the mental plane is, the core mechanism that increases and decreases changes cannot be linked to the person. How can it be said to be yours? Luo Nan's eyes drooped as he stared at the Tai Chi ball in front of him. He was a bit lost in thought. Seeing that the room was about to enter a state of silence, Shui Lei could no longer hold back. If there really is such a problem, then it must be adjusted. Gym Master, this can be adjusted, right? Shui Lei's choice of words was very particular, but Xiu Xinyu's response was very straightforward. External techniques cannot be used by me. It is not too late to start anew and return to the right path. Luo Nan raised his head upon hearing this and looked straight at Xiu Xinyu. His face was wooden and expressionless. Shui Lei saw that the situation was far from good. He rushed forward a step and grabbed Luo Nan's right arm. You can mull over this a bit more. Luo Nan knew what Shui Lei was nervous about, but he was not actually angry. He was just thinking about his grandfather. It was probably because Xiu Xinyu's emaciated physique was a bit similar to his grandfather's. Luo Nan's thoughts drifted to the sanatorium. There was an insane old man there, tormented by illness to the point that he was no longer human. His life was nearing its end. What had caused all of this? Luo Nan was not a doctor. He was unable to make an accurate judgment. However, there was an obvious fact right now. Luo Nan had previously confirmed that he was agitated by anger, but it was meaningless to improve the old man's illness. On the other hand, if Luo Nan admitted the flaws of formatting theory and was able to make some amendments on this basis, then the positive effects would likely be immediate. Luo Nan's mind was a bit absent-minded at this moment. His thoughts changed as fast as lightning, but it was never a simple process. The undercurrent of subversive concepts churned the sand in his heart. Over 5 years, the hardships and obsession of refining and taking medicine day in and day out drifted and surged at this moment. He inexplicably cut into the silhouette of gear under the setting sun. He also looked across the lake at the empty treehouse. Luo Nan was unable to grasp his own emotions for a time, but he had already made up his mind. He took a deep breath, forgetting about whether or not it was flawed. He took a step back and faced Zhou Xian, bowing heavily. I cultivate in formatting theory. It is my grandfather's life's work. I can't give it up no matter what. If the gym master is able to help me mend my flaws and correct my mistakes, I will never forget this favor. Zhou Xian seemed to be startled for a moment. Then he shook his head. You are willing to be controlled by the law. You wish to be imprisoned, but you cannot obtain it. Luo Nan just looked at him. Can I? Zhou Xian answered normally, I'm not proficient in visualization and the like. I can only practice martial arts and refine energy. I can't deal with the so-called flaws and errors in your formatting theory. At most, I can help you strengthen your body, increase the endurance of your body, and give you the space to adjust and experiment. It's enough. Luo Nan was resolute and decisive. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.